It was supposed to be just another delivery. 2 pizzas, 1 side of wings. But when I turned around, he was already behind me, close enough to smell the smoke on his breath, and he was holding a knife. I'm 24, living in Lansing, Michigan. My life was supposed to look a lot different by now. I had dreams, big ones. Becoming an IT expert, working for some tech giant out west, coding solutions that actually mattered. But life, it doesn't always follow your plans. Everything changed when my dad died last year, sudden, no warning. And then Mom? She bailed not long after, leaving me alone with my 8-year-old sister, Carla. I couldn't let her end up in the system or dumped with relatives who barely remembered our birthdays. So I did what I had to. I pressed pause on everything and became her guardian. The bills didn't care about my situation. Rent, groceries, gas, it all stacked up. So I picked up work delivering pizzas for a local joint, Bella Roma's, right off Cedar. Not glamorous, but it kept food in the fridge and the lights on. I usually worked evenings, from about 4 p.m. till midnight. Most nights were uneventful, just dodging potholes and trying to find house numbers in the dark. But everything shifted on July 14th. It was a Thursday. One of those muggy Michigan nights where the air sticks to your skin and the bugs won't leave you alone. Orders were steady. Around 9 p.m., we got a call, 2 large pepperonis, wings on the side. The address was tucked into a quiet stretch of old Lansing, where the trees loom large and the street lights barely work. The house was half hidden in shadows. Only the porch light was on, and it was flickering, like it was struggling to stay alive. I knocked. No answer. "Pizza delivery?" I called out. A voice eventually mumbled back from behind the door. "Be right there." Breathless. Like he'd been running. When he opened the door, he didn't step out. Didn't say a word. Just a hand slipped through the gap in the door, clutching a wad of cash. I caught a glimpse of his face, hood up, heavy stubble, sunken eyes. He nodded once, took the food, and locked the door behind him. I heard the chains slide into place. It gave me an off feeling, but I brushed it off. Weird customers weren't exactly rare. The next night, same order. Same house. My coworker joked I had a secret admirer. I laughed, but I wasn't really feeling it. This time the house was even darker. The porch light was gone, and only the blue glow of a television flickered behind the curtains. Again, he opened the door just wide enough to pass the food through. No talk. Just the transaction. But this time? He tipped me $20. Exactly 20. No extra change. Just precise. I told myself he was shy. Or weird. Or both. But that night, I kept glancing in my rearview mirror, because I swear I kept catching sight of someone in a gray hoodie, watching from a distance. Once by a bus stop. Once at a crosswalk near Cedar. Always gone before I could really look. By Monday, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being followed. By the time Monday rolled around, July 18th, I had a pit sitting in my gut before I even clocked in. I told myself I was being paranoid, sleep-deprived, maybe just stressed from too many double shifts and not enough rest. But deep down, I knew something was off. And sure enough, around 10 p.m., the phone rang. Another order from that same house. Same food. Same guy. I stared at the slip in my hand for a long second. My first instinct was to pass it off to a coworker. But we were understaffed, and I didn't want to make a big deal out of it. Didn't want to seem scared. So I grabbed the pies, the wings, and headed out. The house looked dead this time. Not dim, dead. No porch light. No TV glow. No signs of life at all. Just darkness and that suffocating quiet, like the whole block had gone still. I parked across the street and sat in the car a moment, engine running, fingers drumming on the steering wheel. I thought about just ditching the delivery, marking it as a no-show. But I got out. The gravel crunched beneath my feet as I walked up to the porch. The air felt thick, hot and heavy despite the late hour. I knocked once. Nothing. I knocked again. "Bella Roma's," I called out, my voice sounding way smaller than I wanted it to. Still nothing. I let out a frustrated breath and turned to leave, half annoyed, half relieved, when I heard it. Footsteps. On the gravel. Behind me. I spun around so fast I nearly dropped the food. He was standing there. Same guy. Same gray hoodie. Only this time, he wasn't behind a door. He was maybe 6 feet away, hands buried in the front pocket of his sweatshirt, face shadowed under the hood. I could smell him before he even spoke, sweat, cigarette smoke, something, metallic. We locked eyes and then he said it. "You alone, right?" Time slowed. My brain screamed at me to move, to run, to do something, but I was frozen. My grip tightened around the pizza boxes as if they protect me somehow. Then, his hand came out of the hoodie, and he was holding a knife. Not a huge one. Just a small, sharp blade. Enough to gut a man if he knew where to stick it. I froze. The adrenaline hit me like a freight train, heart racing, lungs tightening, ears ringing. All those survival tips I'd read over the years flashed through my mind like a rapid slideshow. Don't fight unless you have to. Hand it over. Make no sudden moves. Stay calm. So I did what I could. I lifted my hand slowly, trying to keep my voice steady. "Look, man, you can have whatever you want. I'm not looking for trouble." He pointed the knife toward my pockets with a twitchy jerk. My fingers fumbled as I pulled out my wallet and phone. He snatched them fast, eyes darting up and down the street like he expected someone else to show up. Then, just like that, he swung the blade at me. I flinched back, but not fast enough. The knife kissed my palm, opening up a sharp, stinging line of pain that burned hot as the blood trickled down my wrist. I nearly dropped the pizza bag. He stuffed the wallet and phone into his hoodie, hissed, "Don't follow me," and bolted, disappearing between the houses like a ghost slipping through cracks in the dark. For a moment, I just stood there on that porch, frozen. The shock hit first. Then the pain. And then, finally, the fear. It came crashing in all at once. I clutched my bleeding hand, grabbed my car keys from the pizza bag, and staggered back to my car. Drove straight to Bellaroma's and used the store phone to call 911. The cops showed up and took my statement. They checked the house, but it didn't belong to anyone. It had been abandoned for months. According to one neighbor, some guy had been sneaking in and out for weeks, always late at night. But no one had ever gotten a good look at him. I needed a few stitches. Cancelled my cards. Got a new phone. But the part that stuck with me wasn't the wound, it was the violation. The knowledge that someone had planned it. That maybe those previous orders were just rehearsals. Tests. Opportunities for him to learn my routine. And the worst thought of all? That he might try it again, with someone else. I still work deliveries some nights. But I always check the address first now. And I don't go up to dark porches alone. I always liked working late, until I realized I wasn't the only one who stayed after hours. I've never been the jumpy type. Not the kind of guy who spooks at shadows or loses sleep over creaky floors. I like quiet. Solitude. That's probably why staying late at the office never bothered me, at least, not until that October. I work for a mid-sized accounting firm in a forgettable office park just outside Lansing. The kind of building you drive past 100 times and never notice. Everything about it is plain. Fluorescent lights, pale beige walls, and a parking lot so oversized it feels like it was designed for a small stadium. I'd been burning the midnight oil for weeks, drowning in reports, chasing deadlines. I was usually the last one out, and for a while, I even enjoyed it. No ringing phones. No small talk. Just the steady hum of the HVAC and the click of my keyboard. But that Friday night, something shifted. It was late October. The sky was heavy with rain that hadn't fallen yet, and the wind had started picking up outside. Around 8 p.m., I stepped out for a break. The parking lot was mostly empty, just my car, a couple scattered leftovers, and rows of flickering sodium lights casting long, twitching shadows across the asphalt. And that's when I felt it. A weight. like someone's gaze pressing against the back of my neck. I turned around, expecting to see a coworker grabbing something from their trunk. But all I saw were rows of still cars. Silent. Motionless. Then, at the far end of the lot, just barely inside the halo of one broken street lamp, I saw it. A shape. Human. Standing. Not moving. It could have been my eyes playing tricks. It was that weird low light that makes everything blur and morph. I squinted, but before I could really focus, it was gone. I chalked it up to exhaustion and went back inside. But I didn't stop thinking about it. I should have called out to him. But something deep in my gut told me not to. And thank God I listened. At first, I tried to rationalize what I'd seen. Maybe it was just a coworker in casual clothes. Maybe someone forgot something and came back after hours. But the second I took a step closer, the figure slipped around the corner like smoke. And that hallway? It was pitch black. The cleaning staff wear uniforms. Polos. Name tags. None of them wear hoodies, and none of them lurk silently in unlit corridors. Still, I convinced myself I was overthinking. Grabbed my stuff faster than usual and headed out. By the time I hit the parking lot, I was basically speed-walking, scanning the rows of cars for movement, for shadows, for him. But the lot was empty. That should have been the end of it. Just a weird blip in an otherwise quiet routine. But from that night on, things started changing. It was small stuff at first. Doors I know I locked would be cracked open when I came back from the restroom. Papers at my desk would be slightly out of place. Once, I found faint footprints on the carpet next to my chair. And not mine, these were bigger, heavier. My supervisor even asked if I'd been pulling files from the archive room without logging them. I hadn't. Still, I blamed it on the cleaning crew or a confused intern. But then came the night I saw him again. I was leaving late, again, and as I stepped outside I felt it. That same pressure. Like someone was watching from just out of sight. I forced myself to look. And there he was. At the edge of the lot, standing under one of the last flickering lamps. The same gray hoodie, the same posture. Completely still. Facing me. No words. No movement. I stared, waiting for some sign that this wasn't a threat. A wave. A nod. Something. He just stood there. That's when I started changing my habits. Leaving earlier. Asking a coworker to stay late when I needed to. Anything to avoid being alone. But deadlines don't wait. And eventually, I was alone again. It was a Tuesday night. Quiet as usual. Half the lights were off. I blasted music in my earbuds to keep from thinking too much. Tried to drown the unease with caffeine and noise. I was deep in a spreadsheet when the feeling hit me again, someone behind me. I spun in my chair so fast I tore my earbuds out. Nothing. My office door was open, the hallway beyond dark and silent. But something was there. Taped to the outside of the doorframe was a scrap of printer paper. Just a single word, scrawled in thick black marker. Hello? No name. No explanation. I stared at it for a moment before ripping it down and tossing it in the trash. Told myself it was a prank. Tried to laugh it off, but it didn't feel like a prank. It felt personal. That was it for me. I shut down everything and got out. Fast. The entire walk to my car, I kept glancing back, expecting him to step out from between the rows of cars. Nothing. I climbed in, locked the doors, and just sat there for a moment, trying to breathe. Then I looked in the rearview mirror. He was standing at the curb. Maybe 30 feet behind me. Caught in the red glow of my brake lights. Watching. He didn't move. Didn't approach. Just stood there. I backed out so fast I almost clipped a curb and didn't stop driving until I was halfway across town. For a while, things went quiet. I let myself believe it was over. That maybe whoever he was had moved on. But a few weeks later, I stopped by a convenience store on my way home from work. Late again. Too late. I was grabbing coffee and snacks, my brain on autopilot, when I stepped outside and saw him, leaning against the side of the building. Same hoodie. Same posture. Face swallowed by shadow. By the time I got to my car and turned around, he was gone. I started wondering if he was following me now. If this wasn't just about work anymore. Then came the phone call. It was around 7 p.m., and I was trying to finish early for once. My phone rang, unknown number. Normally I'd ignore it, but I picked up. Static. Not silence, static. Just faint, crackling noise, like a weak radio signal struggling to break through. "Hello?" I said twice. Nothing. Then the line clicked and cut out. And suddenly, I remembered that note. "Hello?" I swear I could hear breathing, like he was letting me know. "I can reach you. Whenever I want." That was it. I went to my supervisor the next day and told her flat out, I'm not staying late alone anymore. I didn't even try to make an excuse. Since then, I've kept to daylight hours. Normal people hours. It's helped, but the strangest thing is this, no one else in the office has ever seen him. No one's noticed a stranger. No one's missing files. No hoodie guy in the lot. It's like I'm the only one he's watching. My name's Adrian Mercer. I live in Cleveland, Ohio. I'm a systems analyst at a mid-tier marketing firm downtown. But before anything else, I'm a dad. My 6-year-old daughter's name is Leora. And if that man ever finds his way near my house, God help me, I don't know what I'll do. She looked terrified when I let her in, shivering, breathless, eyes wide with fear. I had no idea she wasn't the one I needed to be afraid of. Working late from home isn't ideal, but it's the best way to juggle my job and raise my daughter. My boss recently approved the arrangement, graveyard shifts done remotely, letting me care for Leora in the evenings and still meet deadlines before dawn. That's how I found myself hunched over my laptop at 11 p.m. on May 4th, 2023. The only lights in the room were the soft blue glow from my screen and a small desk lamp casting long shadows on the walls. Leora had fallen asleep around 8:30 in her bed near my desk, snuggled under a purple blanket she refuses to sleep without. I was halfway through a project when a sudden knock rattled the front door. Not a polite knock. Not hesitant. Urgent. Repetitive. Like someone trying to escape something, or someone. At first, I figured it might be a courier, maybe a neighbor with an emergency. But at this hour? Unusual. The knocking grew louder, more desperate. I reached for my phone and opened the doorbell cam. A teenage girl, maybe 17 or 18, stood on the porch. She was visibly distressed, hair sticking to her cheeks, eyes wide with panic. She kept glancing over her shoulder like something was chasing her. I tapped the mic. "Are you all right?" Her voice crackled through in a whisper. "Please, someone's been following me. I didn't know where else to go." Everything in me screamed to help. I'm a dad. When someone scared and helpless shows up at your door, you don't think. You act. I ran downstairs, pausing only long enough to check the peephole. She was alone. I cracked the door open. She stumbled inside like she could barely stand. Her skin was pale, her breath coming fast, like she'd just outrun the devil himself. I locked the door behind us, careful not to wake Leora. I offered her water, tried to steady her, but she didn't touch it. Just kept watching the door. Then the pounding returned, harder this time. Violent. My blood went cold. I grabbed my phone again and opened the live camera feed. 3 men now stood on my porch. All in dark hoodies. One stepped up, voice flat, demanding I open the door. Said they needed directions. Behind me, the girl tensed like a string pulled too tight. "That's them," she whispered. "Don't open it. Please." I hesitated. Something didn't feel right. I told the men to leave or I'd call the police. Their response? Louder banging. Angry voices. Demands to be let in. And then, everything went sideways. A sharp, splitting pain bloomed at the back of my head. My legs buckled. The girl had hit me with one of the heavy glass coasters from the end table. I remember my phone hitting the floor, the camera feed spinning wildly. My vision tunneled. Sound faded. My last image was the front door swinging open. She'd let them in. When I came to, the house was wrecked. Pillows everywhere. Drawers yanked open. My front door stood wide, cool night air drifting in like an afterthought. My head throbbed as I stumbled upstairs, dizzy and disoriented, but terrified for only one thing. Leora. She was still there. Still asleep, somehow untouched by the chaos. I shook her gently. Her eyes blinked open, confused by my panicked face and the mess around us. I clutched her like I was afraid she'd disappear. Then I called the police. They arrived quickly. Flashing lights lit up the living room walls like a crime scene from a movie. Officers swept the house, but it was too late. The girl and her crew were gone, vanished into the night. They'd taken my laptop. Leora tablet. A few valuables. Ransacked everything they could get their hands on in a matter of minutes. One officer took my statement. When I described the girl, the way she acted, the way she sold the fear, he looked at his partner and nodded. "We've seen this before," he said. "It's a setup. They send in someone vulnerable to get through the door. Once they're inside, the rest follow." Apparently, this gang had been hitting houses all over Cleveland. No one had managed to catch them in the act. Victims were often alone, working late. They didn't always get hurt, but someone always got robbed, and worse, shaken. They said they'd do everything they could. But days passed. Then weeks. No updates. Now, every time someone knocks after dark, my chest tightens. Every time Leora asks me, "Daddy, who was at the door?" I feel that chill all over again. I used to think the scariest things happened outside your home. Now I know better. The place looked harmless online, $50, tropical plants, clean enough. But by midnight I realized I might have just booked a one-way ticket to my last night alive. Back when I wasn't stuck in New York full-time, I did a lot of road travel. Usually for work, sometimes just to get space. One of those trips brought me down to Delaware, specifically a little town called Milford. My final destination was Rehoboth Beach, maybe 45 minutes further south, but I figured I'd shave some time off the morning and just drive in the night before. I hit the road around 6 p.m., about a 5-hour drive. Not bad, but long enough to want to crash somewhere once I got close. I found this little rental listing, typical cheap motel setup. $50. Not glamorous, but from the pictures? Looked decent. I've stayed in enough sketchy spots to trust my gut, and this one seemed okay. That was mistake number one. The guy renting it out gave off weird vibes from the start. Took some back and forth just to get a yes. Said his dad would drop the key off in a lockbox and that there were a bunch of tropical plants in the kitchen. Couldn't move them on short notice. Seemed like a weird detail to share, but fine. I wasn't planning on roasting marshmallows in the kitchen. Just needed a few hours of sleep. I got there around 11:15 p.m. Milford is, well, if you've ever driven through a town that feels more absent than abandoned, you'll get the vibe. Quiet. Flat. Just darkness stitched between empty homes. The place was in a tiny gated community with maybe 20 houses total. Completely still. The only sound was me unlocking the lockbox and turning that old, loud-as-hell key in the front door. It echoed through the dead silence around me like a warning bell. I stepped inside. Tropical plants, check. The kitchen looked like a rainforest exhibit. A weird choice, but whatever. The living room wasn't bad. Decent couch. Carpet that didn't smell. I dropped my travel stuff, duffel, backpack, 2 Ethanets I always bring. I travel light, but smart. Then I checked the bedrooms. That's when the real weird started. First room? Straight out of a haunted thrift store. Dolls, vintage ones. Porcelain, glassy-eyed, 1950s nightmare fuel. No bed frame. Just a twin mattress on the floor with no sheets. Nope. Second room? Covered in nutcracker figures. Like someone had raided a cursed Christmas museum. 1 bed sheet. No pillows. No working light. I flipped the switch, nothing happened. Okay. Couch it is. But I wasn't comfortable. Not even close. The air felt stale. Thick. Like it hadn't been stirred in years. Still, I told myself, just for one night. You'll be gone before sunrise. I was starving, so I found the only place open, a Food Lion closing in 15 minutes. Grabbed some pizza bites and a peach Snapple, because I'm classy like that. Before leaving, I set up my GoPro. Just a habit when I stay somewhere that feels off. I got back. Everything was exactly where I'd left it, good sign. I popped out the SD card, loaded it up. The footage was boring. Nothing moved. No shadows shifting behind curtains. No faces in the reflection. Still, that gut feeling never left. It was after midnight by the time I curled up on the too small couch. No TV, there was one, but no power cable. The closest outlet was just far enough that my phone charger couldn't reach while plugged in. Not that it mattered, I had Sprint, which meant no signal out here. Total dead zone. I kept the light on. Yeah, I'm an adult. But when you're stuck in a house filled with antique dolls and nutcrackers, surrounded by dense silence, you leave the damn light on. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, unable to sleep. Eventually, I gave in to nature's call and shuffled to the bathroom. The bathroom was weirdly bright. Neon yellow paint. Flickering fluorescent light. No shower curtain. Just a stall that looked like it hadn't been cleaned since Obama was in office. So I'm sitting there, doing my business, phone charging outside because of course the outlet doesn't work in the bathroom either. I pick up a random bottle of shampoo or something, just to kill time reading the label. And that's when I hear it. Screech. A chair dragging across the kitchen floor. Hardwood. The kind that makes that distinct, grinding, high-pitched squeal when something slides across it. I froze. Held my breath. The house was still. I thought maybe the GoPro slipped. Maybe the plant pots shifted. Maybe, I imagined it. Then it came again. Screech. Longer this time. Slower. Like someone didn't care if they were heard. I know what I heard. The scrape of that chair, the tapping, it was real. Something sat at that table with me in the house. And I don't think it ever left. So there I am. Bathroom door cracked, sitting on this tiny toilet in a neon yellow box of a bathroom, and I hear it. Screech. The unmistakable sound of a wooden chair dragging across faux hardwood. Not quick. Not clumsy. It moved the exact way someone pulls a chair out to sit. I froze. My stomach turned. I almost threw my heart up right there on the floor. Then came the tapping. Fingers. Slow, methodical taps on a wooden surface, the kitchen table. Tap. Tap, tap, tap. Tap, 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 tap. Faster and faster, like someone growing impatient. I sat there completely still, wide-eyed, whispering to myself. I'm messed up. I'm messed up. I'm messed up. Over and over. I must have said it a dozen times. I waited. 2 minutes. 3. The tapping stopped. Silence. I knew I couldn't stay in that bathroom forever. Whoever was out there, they already knew I was here. And if I stayed put, I'd just be waiting for them to make the next move. So I made mine. I kicked open the door and bolted toward my bag, going straight for the Bowie knife I always carry when I travel. My hands were shaking, but I was ready to fight, because I assumed whoever was in that kitchen wasn't there to ask about the weather. And then, nothing. No one. The chairs hadn't moved. Not even an inch. The kitchen looked exactly the way I left it. I didn't check the bedrooms. I didn't even breathe long enough to doubt myself. I packed my things in 30 seconds flat, grabbed my gear, and got the hell out of that house like it was on fire. I drove an hour to a Holiday Inn, and pulled into the lot just after 3 a.m. The guy at the front desk must have seen the look on my face, sweaty, wide-eyed, borderline panicked. I told him everything. Not the dramatized version. Just straight up. I think someone was in the house. Or something. He didn't ask many questions. Just checked me in early, said my reserved room wasn't ready, and gave me a king's suite instead. Best sleep of my life. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. Paid in cash, mumbled something I couldn't catch, and walked down the hallway like the shadows were whispering his name. I used to work nights at a small motel in London. Not the touristy kind. Just a modest place for road-weary travelers and folks passing through. My job was simple: check people in, tidy up, answer complaints, keep the peace. Most nights were uneventful. Slow. I'd sit behind the desk, flipping through old magazines, sipping coffee that had gone cold hours ago, counting the minutes till morning. But one November night still lingers in my memory like smoke that won't clear. It was cold out. That bone-deep London kind of cold, where the drizzle seems to settle right into your bones. The lobby was quiet. Heater humming. Fluorescent lights flickering just enough to feel haunted. A little after 10, the front door creaked open. That rusty old bell over the door let out its usual ear-splitting cry. I looked up. A man stood there. Messy hair. Pale face. Dark rings under his eyes like bruises that had been there for years. His clothes were disheveled, more street than traveler. He glanced around, nervously, like he wasn't sure if he was being followed. Something about him made my stomach tighten. Still, I reminded myself, this job sees all kinds. He paid in cash. Mumbled something I couldn't make out. I gave him a key and pointed him toward room 4. Watched him shuffle off, hoping he'd crash and that would be the end of it. It wasn't. About an hour passed. I was starting to relax again, cleaning the front desk, enjoying the quiet, when I heard it. Furniture moving. Muffled voices. I frowned. It sounded like it came from his room. I walked down the corridor, the kind where even your footsteps feel too loud, and stopped outside his door. Nothing. Dead quiet. I stood there, listening for a while. Then shook my head and walked back, thinking maybe I imagined it. But the noise came back. Louder. More aggressive. A door slammed. Hard. I jumped from my chair and ran toward the hallway, heart in my throat. Before I even got there, his door burst open. There he was. Standing in the dim hall. Eyes wide. Chest heaving. He didn't say a word. Just pushed past me and stormed into another room, one I knew was vacant. I followed. Cautiously. He was inside, tearing the place apart like something was buried in the walls. Flipped the mattress off the frame. Threw pillows, lamps, the nightstand, everything. Muttering under his breath the whole time, like someone arguing with voices only he could hear. I tried to calm him. "Sir, you need to stop. You can't." He didn't hear me. Or didn't care. And that's when I heard footsteps behind me. I turned, almost ready to bolt, but it was Ethan. Thank God. Ethan was a friend of mine, worked security on the night shift nearby. Built like a fridge, calm under pressure. He'd swing by sometimes just to chat. That night, his timing was perfect. When Ethan grabbed the man, I thought it'd be over in seconds. But the way he fought back, like he wasn't just angry, he was possessed by something wild. Ethan didn't hesitate. He stepped toward the man, calm but firm, his voice low and steady, trying to talk him down. It didn't work. The guy turned on him in a flash, fists flying, his eyes wide with raw, frantic rage. He wasn't trying to escape. He was trying to hurt someone. The fight was ugly. Violent. The kind that shrinks a room down to its walls. They crashed against the bed frame, toppled the nightstand, broke a lamp. Furniture scraped across the floor like the room itself was trying to flee. I just stood there, frozen, completely useless. Ethan finally managed to wrestle him to the ground and pinned him, panting, knees dug into the man's back. "Call the police, now!" he barked. I snapped out of it. My hand shook as I grabbed the dusty landline from the bedside table and dialed. The dispatcher sounded calm, but I could barely get words out between the pounding of my own heart. Within minutes, sirens cut through the night outside. Officers burst in and took control. Two of them pried the man off the floor and cuffed him, though he didn't go quietly. He screamed, words that didn't make sense, kicked, thrashed, spit. And then he was gone. Just like that, the chaos left with him. But the room, torn apart, shredded, looked like a crime scene. Like madness had lived there for years and we just walked in on it. We gave our statements over and over. Ethan beside me, bruised but calm. Other guests had heard the noise too. Some peeked out of their rooms. A few gave their accounts. We learned that the man had a history of breaking into hotels. Mental instability, drugs, violence. Knowing that didn't make it feel any better. As dawn crept in, the heater kicked back on, humming softly like it had all night. Like nothing had happened. The lobby slowly filled with pale light through the misty windows. My shift ended quietly, but I walked home with dread tucked deep under my skin. I kept working there. But I was never the same. Every creak of the front door. Every guest with tired eyes and unwashed clothes. Every time the phone rang late at night, I flinched. His face haunted me. That look in his eyes. Like he wasn't searching for a place to sleep. He was searching for a way to disappear, and take someone with him. When we got to the motel, our teacher said it was the only place available for miles. I believed him, because no sane person would choose that place on purpose. A few years back, during high school, our history class took a field trip to Belgium. We were all buzzing with excitement, teenagers unleashed into a foreign country, thinking about chocolate and Instagram posts, not ghost stories. Our bus rolled up to a rundown motel on the edge of a nameless little town. It looked like it hadn't seen maintenance since the Cold War. Ivy crawled up the crumbling walls. Paint peeled like old skin. I remember exchanging looks with my classmates. This was home for the weekend? Mr. Whitaker, our teacher, clapped his hands and told us to suck it up. It's the only available place nearby, he said. Inside, the place was dim and damp. The woman behind the counter handed us keys, and gave a warning, too casual to feel scripted. Stay out of the basement. We laughed. Thought it was part of the old Europe vibe. But something about her eyes said she wasn't joking. We were assigned the only room on the top floor. Long climb. Narrow staircase. Every step groaned beneath our feet like it hated the weight. The hallway was cloaked in shadows, barely lit by flickering bulbs. Dust floated through the air like it had nowhere better to be. Our room smelled like stale curtains and regret. The furniture looked like it was donated by someone's grandma in the 1970s, and hadn't been cleaned since. Threadbare drapes barely covered the windows, and the walls were yellowed with time. But we were kids. We laughed. Claimed our beds. Made jokes to cut through the tension. Still, none of us really wanted to explore the rest of the motel. As night fell, that uncomfortable feeling thickened. It was like the darkness outside didn't stop at the windows. It poured inside, filling the room with a weight we couldn't name. Mr. Whitaker, ever the optimist, suggested we order food and watch a movie. But the vibe never lifted. Every sound made us jump. The creak of old floorboards. The flutter of curtains. Even the silence felt loud. When someone said they had to use the bathroom, the group went dead quiet. It was small, cramped. Cracked tiles. A single overhead light that flickered like it had a stutter. The air inside smelled like mildew and rust. You couldn't help but feel like something was watching from just beyond the door. I eventually went in myself, despite the dread pooling in my gut. My hands shook as I washed them, my eyes fixed on the mirror, half expecting something to move behind me. Nothing did. But I bolted out fast anyway. When I told my friends how I felt, they laughed. Nervous laughter. The kind that's meant to keep fear away but never quite reaches the eyes. And then, things started happening. Subtle at first. A phone moved an inch. A backpack shifted. We all heard a soft thud, something falling, but nothing was out of place. We told ourselves it was the wind. Bad wiring. Our imaginations. Until we felt it. A sudden drop in temperature. The kind that crawls across your skin like invisible fingers. And that's when the scratching began. We were just starting to relax when it happened. A scream, sharp and raw, tore through the night like a knife through fabric. It came from somewhere in the building, echoing through the walls with a force that felt inhuman. Not a cry for help. Not a prank. A scream so full of terror that it felt ancient, primal, like someone had just come face to face with something they weren't meant to see. We bolted upright, eyes wide, breathing hard. No one spoke. We just sat there, frozen in our beds, listening, waiting for it to happen again. But all we heard was silence. After a long, breathless minute, we scrambled into the center of the room like children. Huddled together, backs against the wall, we stared at the door, as if it might burst open at any second. Mr. Whitaker tried to keep it together, told us to stay calm, that it was probably just another guest. But his voice shook. His hands trembled. He was just as scared as we were. Someone suggested calling the police, but what would we tell them? We heard a scream. We don't know where it came from. We don't want to open the door? That motel was already the kind of place that didn't get cops involved unless there was blood on the carpet. So we waited. For what felt like hours, we sat in silence. Listening. Waiting. Flinching at every creak in the floorboards, every whisper of wind outside the thin walls. Eventually, exhaustion swallowed us whole. No one remembers falling asleep. Just that one by one, the adrenaline gave out, and we collapsed like broken toys. Morning came too quiet. The building was still, like it had been drained of sound. Not a voice. Not a footstep. Not even the hum of water pipes or distant hallway movement. It was like the place had exhaled, emptied itself after feeding. We gathered our things in silence. Eyes hollow. No one said much. Even Mr. Whitaker looked haunted. As we boarded the bus, there was no joking, no selfies, no chatter. Just a shared look between all of us that said we don't talk about this again. But I couldn't let it go. As the engine rumbled to life and we pulled away, I turned around in my seat and looked back. The motel stood there, crooked and weathered, its windows like eyes watching us leave. The morning light made the ivy look like veins crawling across its sides. And just as we turned the corner, just for a moment, I thought I saw someone standing in the top floor window. Still. Staring. I never told anyone that part. And I never went back. But sometimes, when I can't sleep, I wonder, what would have happened if we'd gone down that hallway? If we'd followed the scream? And what if the next group of travelers doesn't ignore the sound?